Today's speaker is Carolyn Schwartz, who will be speaking on living on Jewish time. The parallel universe that exists along our day. No, the parallel universe that exists alongside our day-to-day lives, but creates a different rhythm. I should have read this before. Carolyn Schwartz is a behavioral scientist engaged in quality of life research on medically ill patient populations at the Delta Quest Foundation in Concord, Mass. Her academic background is in public health, biostatistics, and clinical psychology. She and her husband, David Waldman, joined Temple Emunah in 2024 and are regulars for the Shabbat morning services, Minyan Katan activities, and other community events. And Carolyn is also involved in creating more singing opportunities within the community. And thank you. Carolyn, the BIM is yours.
Shabbat Shalom. I've always been fascinated by stories of time travel. I'm intrigued by the idea of time being nonlinear, of parallel universes being accessible despite our human limitations, of being able to go back in time or forward in time and witness a different world, and then rejoin our current time with a new perspective and perhaps even a growing wisdom. So when I first started regularly attending Shabbat morning services, I was struck by a sense of dipping into a parallel universe, one of Jewish time. There's the aesthetic experience of Jewish time. When my husband David and I first started coming to Temple Emunah in early 2024, as soon as I entered the synagogue building, I was captivated by the sounds drifting down the staircase of the davening and mumblings from the sanctuary. When I entered the sanctuary and found what eventually became our spot, I was lulled by the quiet expanse of our sanctuary and the mute suggestions of the wind in the trees I could see from the tall windows. I eased into the service with melodic prayers interspersed with low mumblings. These aspects of our space and liturgical practice helped me to let go of the week and to really be present for the beauty and peace of Shabbat. On those Shabbat mornings when we're fortunate to have Nigun Saloon offered, the songs, our harmonies, and the pithy silences at the end of each song lead to a deeper sense of relaxation, of peace, and of quietude. I find my body, mind, and spirit more deeply synced to this parallel universe. Jewish time has begun for me on that day. I find myself letting go of an awareness of the hour. I am fully present. I notice a small smile that accompanies me, unbidden, the sweetness of the rabbi's blessings of individuals with aliyot to celebrate a milestone, the delightfulness of the young chanters of Ashrei, the fullness of the silence of the Musaf meditation, the wonder of the many connections among individuals at the Kiddush, all reinforce this being in the moment, this cherishing of connections born from syncing to Jewish time. There are also other hints of this parallel universe. For example, each week when we read from the Torah, we read about current events from that week's Parsha, retelling stories from thousands of years ago. Each retelling triggers a different focus of contemplation. The active dialogue across centuries of rabbinic midrash further supports this impression of a parallel universe, independent of linear time. Divrei Torah might cite a number of long-dead scholars whose writings link to the chosen focus of contemplation. In great contrast to citation practices in the scientific literature to which I'm accustomed in my day-to-day practices, nothing is too old to be considered relevant. Jewish time is on a different scale. Jewish time is also marked musically by how our prayer melodies or nusach sometimes differ depending on the occasion. We sing some different prayers at Kabbalat Shabbat than on Shabbat morning. We also have specific melodic versions of some prayers for Ma'ariv on Friday evening as compared to Shabbat morning, as compared to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Some prayers are only sung at the high holidays. As Cantor Louise Treitman said, if someone who is Jewishly musically literate were blindfolded and uninformed about the time of day or year, when they heard someone leading services with correct nusach, they would know what service, what time of day, and what time of year it was, based solely on the prayer melodies. It is also marked musically by differences in cantillation, or trope, at different times in the Jewish calendar. Thus, both the nusach and the trope can signify a timestamp. For me, there is also a way of praying that can distinguish Jewish time. I sing the melodies of our prayers at my own speed, not rushing through them. So I guess you would say I'm not a fast davener. Even if I could, I wouldn't, because this practice of singing the melodies in their own time expands the sense of the timelessness of Shabbat. I'm beginning to understand that being able to dip into this parallel universe every week is a kind of wealth. It's like having $1 and spending it, only to find another $1 appear. It gives me a way to leave my usual frame of reference, to get immersed in another frame of reference, and then come back to my usual one, refreshed with a new perspective. For me, this reboot happens weekly, and that's enough. But I can imagine that people have different needs for such a reboot. I remember something a friend told me, someone who participated in weekly Torah study for many years. He told me that he now reads 4 to 5 commentaries every week on that week's Parsha, and he studies Torah with his 7-year-old granddaughter. For him, dipping into Jewish time is a daily recharge, and yes, he still works his day job. Living in a way that embraces both secular and Jewish time is akin to straddling 2 calendars with 1 foot in each. But what happens if one leaves the Jewish calendar at a time usually reserved for the Jewish calendar to deal with something on the secular one? Someone I once knew tells the story of having had an amazing Yom Kippur experience. The fast was easy, and she was at a high spiritually, but she had to pick up something vital for the break fast. So she stopped at a supermarket. She wrote, "Walking into that supermarket was stunning. I had a sense of vertigo. I was frozen. Everyone in that store was moving in a different time stream than I was. It was shocking, going back and forth between 2 time streams, having a sense of secular time and sacred time allows me to peek into concepts that my embodied mind has trouble understanding." Protecting sacred time is important, not only for the fullness and integrity of my individual experience, it's also sustaining at a macro level. Prominent 19th to 20th century Zionist Achad Ha'am wrote, "More than Israel has kept the Sabbath has kept Israel." Thus, Shabbat is more than a practice observed by the Jewish people. It has played a crucial role in preserving Jewish identity and community throughout history. The observance of this Sabbath has served as a powerful symbol and practice that has helped to unite and sustain the Jewish people. When I think of the Jewish observance of Shabbat across the many time zones on earth, I'm struck by the image of a wave of sacred moments linking us to other Jews throughout our planet. Rabbi Abraham Joseph Heschel describes the Sabbath as a, quote, palace in time, unquote, whose architecture is built through a combination of intentional abstentions, such as refraining from business dealings or long-distance travel, and acts of prayer, study, joyous meals, and interactions with loved ones. And Cantor Vera Brookhuizen wrote, community sets and determines our Jewish times. Community builds the palace in time, a la A.J. Heschel, of Shabbat, into and out of which we can each drift at will. Each time we gather for services, each time we make a Shabbat meal, invite people into our homes for it, each time we sing a special Shabbat song together, each time we bless our kids and are blessed ourselves, each time we do something on Shabbat to make it different from the rest of the week, we're laying another stone of that palace. We keep Jewish time together, and Jewish time keeps us. And while Shabbat is a weekly practice that may be an entree for many into living on Jewish time, the other events on the Jewish calendar have their own unique import. They can provide a needed ballast even within the Jewish time rubric. We keep joyful rituals such as B'nai Mitzvah, holidays, and festivals, in addition to Shabbat, no matter what. Even when a loved one passes, we know that in the midst of our sadness, there is something coming in our Jewish calendar, a life cycle event, a holiday, a festival, and of course Shabbat, that is just what is needed during this time of loss. And no matter what is reported in the newspaper about the challenges of our time, these rituals are a welcome respite. Over the years of being a Shabbat morning regular, these growing levels of awareness felt like a mystery unfolding as I became more familiar with our liturgy. And this mystery has evolved into a sense of the mystical. A sense of the mystical emerges, for example, in experiencing firsthand the wisdom of Jewish practices when mourning, taking time to sit with the loss, sharing memories at a Shiva Minyan, accepting the care of our community that brings food or just sits quietly with us, or at a wedding where the newly married couple is separated from the kahal for a private moment of reckoning of the powerful significance of what just happened under the chuppah. All of these practices of stopping time to pay attention to the present moment feel mystical to me. So here's a mystical question for you, one for which I do not have an answer, but find myself pondering. Living in the secular world, we mark time with the solar calendar, but the Jewish calendar is based on the Hebrew lunisolar calendar, which means it's based on both the cycles of the moon and the Earth's orbit around the sun. So, for example, when my father died on January 23rd of 1997, it was known in the Jewish calendar as the 15th of Shabbat, which happened to be Tu B'Shvat. So his yard site takes place on Tu B'Shvat, which this year was February 13th. But my experience of the memory of his death is on January 23rd. I find myself pondering what this means. Should I, for example, be memorializing him for the whole period captured by these two calendars? Should I ignore my experience of the memory, January 23rd, and just track it on Tu B'Shvat every year? I feel more of a connection to the secular date. And I wonder about the deeper meaning of this fact that the solar and lunisolar calendars that we straddle are so disparate so much of the time. So in summary, I do not mean running late when I think of living on Jewish time. I'm referring to this parallel universe of Jewish time that I experience at least once a week in recognition of Shabbat's perfection, and for some or all of the many Jewish holidays. We can access this parallel universe daily or on any other schedule. Accessing this parallel universe is really akin to a kind of time travel, a time travel that we can easily do by participating, a time travel that can remind us of other perspectives, we can embrace. Shabbat Shalom.
Yasher Koach to Carolyn.